today I'd like to share a little bit of correspondence from my constituents who were quite concerned about this bill and were very articulate. And I might add that there was not a single constituent in my district that asked for this bill, nor supported this bill, which maybe some of you might find unusual, but that's the facts. First, I'd like to share a letter from Suzanne. She said, I need to write you as soon as possible regarding the trap legislation regarding abortion rights. I know that I don't have to tell you this, where the idea of, quote, small government is in direct conflict with big government Republicans sticking their nose in my vagina. How can we get the conservatives, mostly men, to quit blaming women, many times girls, solely for unwanted pregnancies? I'm sure that you know that the United States has the most unwanted pregnancies of any, quote, developed country in the world. Frankly speaking, and I feel free to do that with you, men have been blaming women since the beginning of civilization for their own inability to control their sexual behavior. So that's what Susan thinks. The second letter is much more serious, and because it discloses some personal information, I am going to change the name of the person who wrote it. But she lives in Eau Claire. We'll call her Heather. Here's the deal about Senate Bill 206. Only 16% of rapes and sexual assaults are reported to police, and she gives this citation. Only about 5% of rapists will ever spend a day in jail. 1 in 6 U.S. women have experienced an attempted or completed rape. We will never know the amount of pregnancies that come out of that 1 in 6. But I figure 429,918 people is 1/6 of the population. This many women are rape survivors at some point in their life. Over 400,000 Wisconsin women will be victims of rape. Rape victims will be directly affected by this law. As a rape survivor myself, I have spent years of my life mourning and trying to get my life back. It has been a few years now, and I still have hard days. I spent a year crying in my bed, a whole year. The 24th year of my life was wasted thanks to something I had no control over. And I'm not saying this out of pity. I'm explaining this to you in the hopes that you get it. I was fortunate enough to not become pregnant. And if I was, being forced to watch an ultrasound after I chose to abort it, I cannot even imagine the emotional toll that this would give me. Who knows if that would have driven me to complete depression, insanity, or even worse, suicide. And suicide is not unlikely. I had a female friend who could not survive her past rape, and she took her own life, and she wasn't even pregnant. But this bill, Mr. President, is much darker. Only 1 out of 6 in the population. 1 out of 6 are raped or sexually assaulted, and only 16% are reported to the police. Now, when I was 15, Mr. President, I was the victim of sexual assault. And yesterday, we heard about how few women are in the legislature. And I don't know if I'm the only woman in the legislature that was the victim of sexual assault. But I can tell you that Heather's letter really touched me. And the Senator 28 who wants to reduce abortion. I too believe that abortion should be rare, but I strongly believe it must be legal and it must be safe. And this bill works very hard to close clinics in Wisconsin. And then where will women go? And if we truly want to make abortion rare, Mr. President, why are we defunding Planned Parenthood? Back in your office, every single one of you has a very large book. And if you would look on page 308, you would see what's happening to the Well Women programs and to Planned Parenthood.
question is passage of Senate Bill 206. Senator from the 28th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you very much. And the theatrics surrounding the former presentation, as we all know, those of us that look at the bill and read the bill, it exempts rape and incest. So some of the theatrics, please know that. As those that read the bill and understand that. We had a lady testify, her name was Carol. She testified that a number of years ago she went to a clinic, found out she was pregnant. I believe her location was Kenosha. The testimony's out there, we can track that down. She was told to go to Milwaukee and get her abortion. She described the very cold procedure and what happened in the cold environment. She went to this cold environment. Someone was sitting there passing around Valium. She goes in, she's crying through the procedure. They told her, don't worry, it's a blob of tissue, you're doing the right thing, get it over with quick. She goes home and lives with this day after day after day after day. The rest of her life, she lives with this trauma. And it's time for that to end. It's time for women to know the facts. It's time for them to know what they're carrying in their womb and what they're doing. They get those full facts. They make that decision. It's legal. They do it. They terminate their pregnancy. If you have a loved one that's thinking about terminating their pregnancy, for crying out loud, you want them to have full information. You want them to have an ultrasound. You want them to know what's going on in that womb and what they're doing, and that they're not going to be able to change that for the rest of their life. They make that decision. It's over. It's over in a few minutes, and then later on they can live with the fact that they terminated their pregnancy and it was the best thing for them. Or they killed their child and they made a horrific decision and they regret it and they wish they never would have done it. And for those that want that information and wish that they never would have done it, that's what Sonia's law is about. You know, you really make up your mind you want to do it, go somewhere safe. Go somewhere safe and credible. But these places that tell you it's a blob of tissue, get it done quick, you're doing the right thing, you don't have a job, you don't have a father, you're too young, you're this, you're that. That's words I shouldn't say on the Senate floor. But that's baloney. That's just wrong. That is wrong. And we're not doing that to women anymore in this state. You're going to get the full information and you want to make that decision and do it. At least you're doing it with full information. You have regret. You know, it's an I told you so thing. But the mountains of women now that are regretting these abortions, you know, when it became popular in the 60s and it was almost the thing to do, you needed to get one of them to be a woman. And now look what those women have to go through when they hit menopause, when they get to be about 40. It's a severe attack on their mental health and on their physical health. And then those that, you know, it was the only chance they had, then they couldn't have children after that. Honest to Pete, this is the most ridiculous thing. And I think we ought to be doing a lot more, and you're probably going to see a lot more laws from me, because these clinics that pull this crap, it's a blob of tissue, it's the best thing you can do, you're too young, that's baloney. You described that procedure. This is such a small thing we're doing. For Pete's sake, it's a health care that any reputable place should be doing. And the fact that we do need to ensure that this service is provided for women, I think, is a pretty sad day. And I think there's a lot more that goes on in those abortion clinics that promote abortion that women should be better informed about. This is a small step today. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from the 13th. Mr. President, I move that the body vote immediately on the current question.
The question before the House is non-debatable. Before the House is non-debatable. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Carpenter. Coles. Cullen.
Call the roll.
Darling.
You're out of order.
Ellis.
Sit down. You're not recognized. The question before the House is non-debatable. Call the roll.
Senator Carpenter. Coles.
Question before the body now is passage of the bill. A roll call will be required. The clerk will call the roll. Clerk will call the roll.
Senator Carpenter. Coles.
You're interrupting a roll call. Sit down. Right now. Call the roll.
Senator Carpenter. Coles. Cullen.
You're
Darling.
interrupting a roll call, and that will not be tolerated. Sit down.
Ellis.
Go ahead.
Ellis.
Aye.
Erpenbach. All members vote in affirmative with the exception of Senators Carpenter, Cullen, Erpenbach, Hansen, Harris, Jauch, Larson, Lassa, Lehman, Miller, Risser, Schilling, Vinehout, and Wirch.
17 ayes. The bill passes. Senator from the 13th.
I ask unanimous consent that all of our actions be immediately messaged to the Assembly.